So welcome everybody for this second, well, actually third webinar we are facilitating this week as part of the launch of the pilot version of the ULS, the Universal Logistics Standards. And well, it's a great important moment for us. This is the end of this project, and maybe the start of a second project. And we'll share some ideas with you at the end of this presentation. We had yesterday the two first webinars, first webinar in French, a second webinar in English in the afternoon. And today we're happy to facilitate this second webinar in English for those who cannot attend yesterday. The real aim of this webinar is to share what we did along this project and the final product, the pilot version. You've been all involved, or most of you, you've been involved in some of the activities where we had during the regional consultations, during the draft of the ULS as part of the TAG, the Technical Levels Group, or other activities. So this is we did it thanks to your help. So thank you. And we are happy to share this now with you. Just quick message: we are recording this session, and we'll share it via our social network for those who cannot join today. So you don't have to connect, turn on your video if you don't want. If you want, it's fine. And we'll facilitate, we'll have a brief presentation, George and I, first to introduce the project, to explain how we did it, why we did it, and we'll also introduce the final product, the pilot version. We are just about to publish. It will be online tomorrow. So, and after this presentation, we'll answer all your questions or comments, and you can send your questions or comments via the chat if you want during the session, and we'll review this after the presentation. So thanks again. I also acknowledge that we are recording the session, so we are all aware. And let's start with this webinar. So this is, I'm Camille Nussbaum. I'm the coordinator of the ULS project since its beginning last year in August. I'm based in Madrid, in Spain. I work at IECA, one of the 4 members of the INSPIRE consortium, with Groupe URD in France, GPPI in Germany, and ODI in the UK. And this project is funded by the DG ECHO, the European Office for the Humanitarian Action. And I have the great chance to work with George Fenton. Hi, George.
Thanks, Camille. So yes, I'm George Fenton. I am one of the logistics experts that's been working on the project since the start. I'm based in the UK, and I also am leading the Humanitarian Logistics Association, which is helping with communications on the project.
And as part of the core team, we also have 2 more colleagues, Carla Fibla, our communication officer. She's also based here in Madrid, and Dani Garcia, the second expert, thematic expert in logistics, also based here in Madrid. So with this webinar, we would like to share with you, to review for some of you, you already know maybe the project, but the rationale of this project, to understand the rationale of universal standards in the field of the human logistics. And obviously we will be happy to discuss with you more about that. We'll also introduce the ULS in a practical way. We'll have a look to a specific example to understand, to review the logic, the architecture, the different uses of the standards. And at the end, we'll also introduce some ideas about the future. This is the end of this important project. And the end of this project is the publication of the pilot version of the ULS. So in the near future, we would like to start the actual pilot phase of the standards. And with some of these, we'd like to discuss with you. So let's start. As a reminder, we started this project in August last year. Sounds like a century ago, since the COVID crisis and all these things. We started this by reviewing the existing standards, by discussing with many different stakeholders in the sector, in big meetings, small meetings of the sector. We also had more and more interviews, one by one. We had around 20 interviews with different actors, from big NGOs, small NGOs, local NGOs, international NGOs, donors, academics, different actors. And thanks to that, we finally set at the end of the last year the format of these standards. We also choose this name, Universal Logistics Standards, because we decided to highlight the universal characteristic feature of these standards, and we'll talk more about that in 1 minute. After that, we published an inception report to summarize our findings and our decisions, and we started the drafting phase from November last year, December, to May this year. In May, we published a first draft version of the ULS, and this version was actually the product we shared via the open consultations we had, because of COVID, fully online, with different sessions we had in the regional consultations, and also via the platform we launched in June. So we are here just at the end of this long phase of open consultations and review of the document based on these consultations. And as I said, we are just about to publish this pilot version, ready to be tested, to be used at field level. Over to you, George.
Thanks, Camille. So why did we feel that there was a need for universal humanitarian logistics standards? I think it's good to consider the history a little bit of humanitarian logistics, going back some 20 years, when there was a start to a number of initiatives that were taken to improve the way that humanitarian aid organizations recognize the importance of logistics and supply chain in humanitarian action. And there was a few years ago, for example, a key project, interagency project, called the Parcel Project, which stood for the Partner Capacity Enhancement for Logistics, looking at ways in which local organizations could be supported to improve their logistics capabilities. And we took the materials based on that, the standards that were created through the Parcel Project as the basis for now the Universal Logistics Standards. There have been a number of other initiatives, as I say, and such as the Logistics Operations Guide, which is hosted by the Logistics Cluster, which we want to be able to reference, of course, as well as other technical, sometimes commercial standards that are relevant and used in humanitarian operations. The ULS very much, though, wants to be as open and as universal as possible, recognizing that many organizations have their own standards, but they are organization-centered, and few are universally recognized or universally applicable. And particularly for smaller or local organizations, non-logistic staff or often implementing logistics at small scale. Find it a challenge to translate the high-level principles into an applicable, measurable good practice. And so what we want the ULS to be able to do, and I think we've made good progress in this regard, is to have it used as a source of guidance, a source to provide advice on capacity building, and particularly to improve coordination between different stakeholders, so not just stakeholders within the aid sector, but also stakeholders such as the public sector, private sector, and others, local response and first responders in a crisis often find it difficult to have access to guidance to do the best type of response in terms of logistics, supply chain management. And we want to be applicable in all contexts, and for ULS to be used at all management levels. Back to you, Camille. Could I just say, could you just mute your microphones if you're not speaking?
Yeah.
Somebody's not muted at the moment. There seems to be some typing in the background.
Thanks, George. So if we talk about standards and universal standards in the field of humanitarian action, there is a key reference here, and this is the Sphere Handbook launched in the last century in 1998, and with a huge success all along the recent years, because right now it is a common reference for all the humanitarian workers all around the world to know what are the minimum standards for the main, in terms of the main features of the humanitarian response, thanks to the humanitarian charter, to know the rights of affected communities and who are part of the humanitarian response, the protection principles and the core humanitarian standard, but also for very specific fields of many of the humanitarian responses, in the wash sector, the food sector, shelter, and health. So because the Sphere Handbook had this huge success in the sector, many others handbook sets of standards were developed to provide some additional standards for other important fields of the humanitarian response. For instance, INE for the educational emergency, LEGS for livestock in emergency, and more and more. So when we started this project, we identified the Sphere as a good example of open and universal standards, useful for the sector, and voluntary standards. Open because they are built from the sector with more and more consultations process, capturing all the different experiences and in different organizations in different contexts, to set standards, to describe the good practices, what we should expect as a minimum quality response in a disaster. But these are also voluntary because these are not standards to enforce any organization or any humanitarian worker to do this or that. These standards set a reference, a common agreed reference, because of this openness, these participatory processes, to ensure that we are capturing the good practices in the sector. And this is why so many organizations and humanitarian workers all around the world are using these standards. So when we started, we identified clearly that the Sphere Handbook, the Sphere logic, and the Sphere architecture would be the way we would like to develop the standards. We started after the Inception report in end of November last year. We start to work with a technical advisory group. This is a group of around 15 very highly skilled, experienced humanitarian workers in different countries, in different organizations. And we started with them to define the 6 chapters of the ULS and to actually draft these six chapters. We had people from different organizations. We included in this slide many logos, so you can have an idea. At this stage, I mean, we are about to launch the pilot version of the ULS and the final version. We haven't asked for official endorsement. We are not sort of things now. So we just ensure to have people from different contexts, different organizations, local, internationals, donors, operational organizations, academics, training organizations, to have these different perspectives, so we can provide a useful tool, a useful standards for many different actors we already mentioned. Thanks to the TAC, we were able to publish at the end of May the V1 draft, and this was the start of iterative review process. We launch an open platform, online platform, to share this draft online and to get feedback and comments. And we also start in June some different regional consultations. Thanks to the first comments, we are able to have a brief edit, a minor edit in July. We published the V1.5. We had a major edit, the V2, at the end of December, based on more and more comments from the regional consultations from the platform, but not tackling the more complex and controversial comments. And this is why we had at the beginning of October a validation workshop where we discussed with the TAG and we invited experts in these different fields of logistics. We had debates and we have rotation to decide what to do with the more complex, controversial comments identified. So thanks to that, we'll be able tomorrow to publish the V3, and this is the pilot version of the ULS, where we'll include all the things we decided in the validation workshop. We had feedback thanks to the regional consultations. Actually, it was a really important moment for us to share these documents with so many different actors all around the world in these 5 different regions. We had a total of 17 sessions in 3 languages, in English, but also in French and in Spanish. And we had a total of almost 200 participants. Again, it was really insightful to compare, to have feedback and to compare. We had really different comments from one region to another, and it was really insightful for us. And this is how we were able to identify so many things to improve in the V2 and the V3. We also add more and more comments via the online platform. We receive, this is an open platform, so people can create an account quite in a moment, in 1 minute, and provide feedback on specific elements of the ULS Handbook. And we had more and more along this last month comments via the platform. And we also included these comments in the 2 last updates. We had the V2 and the V3. Over to you, George.
So yes, so what we have been doing in recent weeks is looking at ways in which we can improve the earlier versions, as Camille was highlighting. We've been collecting inputs, particularly to look at ways in which cross-cutting themes can be included, and particularly cross-cutting issues that had not previously been considered for humanitarian logistics, such as gender and diversity. Most recently, we've been discussing and starting to prepare material for. We had originally set out to recognize the importance of cash-based assistance and markets, and the importance of understanding market-based assistance. And so there's various elements within ULS that reference that. Also, of course, very importantly, the environmental sustainability of humanitarian supply chains, and issues around protection and safeguarding, not only of people being assisted, but also of staff working in different difficult contexts. And the other thing that we have been working on recently as well is to refine the indicators that we'll discuss in a minute, and ways in which we can use ULS to provide advice on how to measure the best things to look at to ensure that certain standards have been met. And we've also been working on improving the glossaries, so the terminology, as I mentioned earlier, is absolutely key, so that we come up with a universally recognized set of terms that can be understood in different elements of humanitarian logistics. So these are the 6 chapters that are included in ULS. So asset management, distribution, fleet management, warehousing, procurement, and transport, with procurement being, of course, the key to the start of the supply chain. And then, as I mentioned earlier, they're the cross-cutting topics now, with gender now being included quite recently in this version 3.
So this is the format of the ULS. As we mentioned, we developed this really in line with the Sphere logic, the Sphere architecture. So here you have the standards. The standards themselves are quite short. Here, the storage facility fulfills the necessary requirements to accomplish its expected functions and contributing and la la la. And these standards are general and qualitative in nature. And this is actually the universal part of the standard. So this is what anyone should want as a minimum as part of the humanitarian response in all countries all around the world. So to help humanitarian workers, organizations to actually implement actions to ensure that they are aligned with these universal standards, we are providing some key actions, the practical steps to attain the different minimum standards. It is important to highlight that these are suggestions. We understand that normally in most of the context, you would like to implement these 6 sort of actions here. But maybe in a specific context, or because of your organization or whatever, you'll have to adapt some of these actions, or you'll not be able to do one of these actions, sorry. Also, we are providing some key indicators, and these serve as signals to measure. It's the way to measure whether the organizations is actually aligned with the standards or not. Again, these are suggestions, and normally in most of the context, again, you'll be able to use these here 5 indicators, but maybe in some contexts you'll not be able to use one or another. So it is important to understand this flexibility in a good way. I mean, it's not just to pick one in each and that's it, but it's just to use it wisely, consistently, and to adapt these key actions and key indicators to a specific context. This is why at the end we have some guidance notes. And actually for these standards, we have more guidance notes than this, and we just cut because it was too much. And actually, in the process of refining and editing the different draft, we added many of these guidance notes so people can understand how to adapt, because you are in a specific context or because you are in a specific moment of the human response in the really crisis, or 2 months after, or 3 months, or 6 months, more in the recovery phase. So here, the users have many details to understand how to adapt these key indicators and these key actions. So what's next? And this is the last part of our presentation. As we said, tomorrow we'll launch this V3, the pilot version, and this is the last product, the end product of this project. Actually, we have done almost all the edits, but we just want to review and to add some few more sentences to explain better some of the concept there. But what we like to highlight is this is a pilot version. It will be available with the same UL you may have now, so not a different one. We'll just update the version, and you'll see in the cover pilot version. We'll also publish a PDF for those who prefer to print it or to download it. But it is important to understand that this is the pilot. So this is a version good enough to be piloted, but this is not a final version. It is what we expected. It was the aim of this project, to develop a pilot version. And what we would like to do in the coming weeks, month, is to start a second project. We've been discussing this with different actors. We'll have to discuss a bit more before sharing more specific details on that. But nutshell, what we would like to do is to select some organizations, to select some projects and teams within these organizations, and to train these teams, and to see how the ULS can be useful for different type of actions they have. And we'll monitor this, we'll evaluate this, and thanks to this experience at field level, also at headquarter level, we'll be able to identify some elements to be improved. We'll open new consultations in the different regions we had in the open consultations we had in the recent month, and we'll open again the different edits rounds to improve this ULS, and finally publish the final version. And this would be tentatively in 1 year. So it is important to explain that, because again, we are very happy and proud to publish this week the pilot version of the ULS. It's a huge step. It is a valuable tool for the sector, we think. It is something anyone in his or her organization, country, context can actually use, start use as a reference, but it is a pilot version, so there is a need to test it and to improve it. So we'll share it openly. People can download it, can share the URL. We'll also insist that people could and should share with us their experiences, and hopefully we'll set a more formal mechanism in the next project to do this more structured piloting and reviewing of the ULS in the next year. So this is it for the presentation, and hope it was interesting, and we would like to discuss with you, to know your comments, your questions regarding this pilot version of the ULS. You can share your questions in the chat. Maybe it would be the easiest ways to do that? Or will organizations for the piloting be selected? As I said, we haven't confirmed yet formally these details, the next project, but obviously it would make sense to select organizations from different countries, different also in terms of the international, local, regional organizations, and also regarding their purpose. Maybe we already started to discuss with some organizations focused in the human response, but also others as part of the training initiatives. So we will try to have 3, 4, 5 different organizations in different regions with different mandates. And this is what we can say today. And a question here regarding the training plan linked to the piloting. Again, we haven't started yet to define these details. Obviously, when we'll start the piloting, we need to define a training plan, as you just mentioned, to train these teams, to explain what are the ULS, what you can use, how you can use these standards. But we haven't yet defined much more than that.
There's one question, Fatima, about whether the training will be conducted virtually or in person.
Well, I guess because of COVID, I'm afraid we'll have to do this fully virtually.
Camille, what will be the, like for Asia, for every region, how this organizations will be selected for piloting the training? It'll be like that, or it'll be how it is?
So far, we don't know. I don't know, George, if you have more ideas on that. We discussed a bit. We have these general ideas to select, again, 3, 4, or 5 organizations. And we'll select different organizations based on the different regions. They are actually working, providing assistance. The different languages. We'll have to confirm with the potential donors how much money we can invest in the different phases, and this will allow us to go to translate the document to different languages and to include different regions, or maybe focus in less regions. But again, we think it will be 3, 4, 5 organizations because we are a small team, core team, as we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, and it would be difficult to monitor, evaluate, support more than that. But definitely, we would try to cover the 5 regions we had during the open consultations. And regarding the training. I mean, it would make sense to develop sort of guide, training basis based on the ULS, so people can refer to the ULS in different situations, having a common understanding of the main concepts in the 6th chapter we have in the ULS. But if you have ideas, we are really happy to have more ideas on how to shape this pilot phase.
I think from my side, it would be good, of course, to ensure that we can involve different types of organizations. So we're not just targeting international aid organizations or NGOs, but also public sector entities that may be at least willing to participate. And I suppose the other thing that we're exploring is the potential to partner with an organization or several organizations that in turn can can help to facilitate, coordinate the piloting of ULS in different regions. So it's still early days in terms of what it will all look like, but there's certainly a lot of interest to pilot the ULS in different parts of the world, and so we're confident that we'll get a good amount of input over the next few months.
And as we did, just to answer the last question, as we did with the ULS, the handbook, we'll share all the resources openly, so people can actually use it. So we will not charge anyone to be part of the pilot or use some of the resources, training resources, or the resources of the piloting. We'll have some mechanisms to, starting tomorrow, anyone can download the handbook and pilot the handbook, use it by himself or herself, and learn from that. But we'll set with the next project different pathways, mechanisms, so people can more formally use some resources to pilot the handbook as part of the selected 3, 4, 5 selected organizations, or more widely to use some resources we would upload in the website, so people can maybe have a short training and then use and then send some feedback via email or the platform or other mechanisms. But again, this is really the inception phase of the second project. We'll have to discuss more, and first to confirm with the different stakeholders, and first the donors. But we are pretty confident with that. It's just a matter of time to confirm when we'll be able to formally launch the second project. Yeah. In any case,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. My name is Professor Nato from Nigeria. I just wanted to say one or two things about the piloting. Yes, the next phase, which is the piloting, and I do believe with you that it has to be, you need to have a more structured piloting part of it, so that you can have results that are reproducible, that can speak to some of the issues that you're trying to look at, in addition to the more general piloting that might take place. But I also think it would also be nice if you could try to have representation in the based on region, right? So as you begin to plan for the next phase, you might want to consider that, so that you also have been able to have the perspective from the various regions and how the applicability of the standards, in those regions. And the last comment I also want to quickly mention, because I didn't see that in that chart. Do you plan to have like a dissemination after the piloting, and you've standardized it? You may want to disseminate the standards, maybe among countries, organizations, governments, and all of that, so that they can also be widely aware of these standards, and they can also see how they can use it within their countries or organizations.
I didn't get the end of the questions, but if I understand well, what we did during this first project, we tried. I mean, we are a small team with limited resources, but I think we reached very different actors, including donors. We had some colleagues from ECHO in the TAC, for instance, and we had interviews with other donors along the inception phase and the drafting phase. And we'll continue to do that. I mean, the really value of these standards, universal standards, with the same logic of Sphere, is that they are useful for many different actors, not only NGOs, small, bigs, but also private sector, public sector, donors, and others. So we would include, again, if we can go for the 5 in-depth piloting, we would try to include maybe a donor as part of this in-depth piloting. And as part of the dissemination of this pilot version, we'll definitely include donors and other actors so they can know about the ULS, use it, and provide some feedback to improve these. Because again, the really value of these standards is to set a common language for all these different actors, a common understanding of these important key things in the Fenton response in terms of logistics. So we definitely need to have more and more feedback from different actors. And that's what we did during the regional consultations in these 17 sessions we had. We had like 200 participants, and they were coming from mostly NGOs, UN agencies, but also different donors, ECHO, USAID, and others, and also academics, also some from private companies. So we'll definitely have to ensure that we are covering all these different actors in the next project.
Yeah, it's okay. What I was specifically, I was looking at the situation where you could, I know maybe because of budget, you may not have planned for that dissemination, but there are other ways you can do that, maybe through big conferences or maybe any of the UN agencies meeting and things of that nature, right? You could the team could also find a way to disseminate the standard after the piloting, and more widely, so that apart from those who are in the core business of humanitarian work, others could also be aware of this. Even the governments, like in my country, we have a Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, which is headed by the cabinet minister, for example. We would like to see that, know that there's a standard document like this, right? So I think you should maybe find a way to bring that in later on.
I fully agree. Yeah, dissemination is key. Actually, we didn't mention that, but we had different meetings with the law cluster, the global law cluster, for instance, and to share the results of the project in different moments of the project at the end of different phases. And we had last week a last meeting with the global law cluster to introduce what we did today, to introduce this pilot version, all the good things we have with this pilot version, but also the limits, because it's a pilot version, not final version, and to share more about the next steps. So we'll continue to be in touch with them, and obviously we'll be in touch with we should be in touch with more and more different actors, as you mentioned, governments.
No, we certainly welcome your thoughts around this, Nato, and we do have a communications expert, Carla, that you mentioned at the introduction to the session today, and we are working with Carla to put together a communications plan, or would need to put together a communications plan moving forward, to make sure that there are a number of stakeholders that perhaps currently are not aware of the ULS that need to be aware. So there's a broad number of stakeholders, an ever widening number of stakeholders that would benefit from ULS. It's critical that we do have a good dissemination plan in place. You're absolutely right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
George, one more comment with regard to the cross-cutting areas. I think disability was missed. How can we bring in disability as a part of the cross-cutting part in this whole system, in this whole, when we just do this piloting of, like, I don't know how we are going to impart it, because disability got missed in that cross-cutting area. I think you can think about it.
So visibility, Andrew, do you mean, are you talking about?
Not visibility, disability.
Oh, disability. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes. So disability is included, and we are touching on gender and diversity. So
Okay.
disability is, of course, connected. But there was recently I think a companion guide to Sphere released on disability.
Yeah.
And so what we would want to do is reference other materials that have been more specifically created around the issue of disability. So at the moment we're looking at the issue of diversity and inclusion, but in the next phases of ULS, if more work needs to be done in the area of disability, we will certainly consider that.
So again, it was a privilege for us to share this last product of the project in this webinar. This is the end of quite a long and interesting journey, but it's also, as we mentioned, it's the start of a second, I'm sure, interesting journey with the piloting. So we'll be in touch with you. We have your emails, and we share with you. We'll confirm when the pilot version will be actually online tomorrow, and we'll be in touch with you with the next steps of the project in the coming weeks, we hope, or coming month. And again, you can be in touch with us via the social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, where we are constantly, we are sharing updates regarding the activities and the different version online. We'll soon publish a video again as a tool to disseminate the ULS. So yeah, and get back to us if you have some ideas, you have some questions. You can get back to us via these social media or via email. Thanks again to everyone. Have a good day. Take care, and talk to you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Camille.
Bye.
Thank you.